Hey guys, pardon the horrific lighting and dark, depressing hotel room, but this is the life of an airline pilot. So this is my studio for today. I have a line check in a couple days, so I couldn't get rid of this trip. So here I am in Bradley, Connecticut, for like 30 hours, and it's raining out, and I had nothing better to do, so I'm going to make a quick video, and I wanted to talk about a little bit of, I guess, a trend that I'm seeing is somebody will ask a question on one of the Facebook groups, like Airplanes and Coffee, Student Pilot Community, or like the Aviators Lounge, and they'll ask a simple question because they're low time or they're a student, and then they get jumped on by everybody. And the most recent one was a good debate, I think, about straight-in approaches. And the amount of people that jumped on and said, never do straight-in approaches, always fly on the 45. It's super dangerous. The FAA recommends against it, all that stuff. Listen, yes, the FAA put out an advisory circular recently about non-towered operations. It's AC 90-66C, and it talks about operations on a non-towered airport. Listen, you can do a straight-in approach, right? It's not illegal. It's not dangerous, right? I mean, if the traffic pattern is full and you come blazing in on a 10-mile final, yeah, that's not ideal, and there's potential for mid-air collision, and it's not safe, so on and so forth. But if you're flying around and the airport is pretty quiet, sleepy airport, it'd be good practice to actually do a straight-in approach. And the reason being is if you do the same thing every single time, reduce power to 1500 RPMs to beam the point, and then when you're 45, turn base, add flaps, you do the same thing over and over again, there will come a time, whether you're flying in a controlled airport and tower wants you to do a straight in, or maybe there's weather on the downwind leg, or there's a heavier airplane that you don't want to get behind because of wake turbulence, and it would benefit you to come straight in. The sight picture is a lot different, and doing things out of the ordinary is a little more challenging than you would think. So I think it's important for everyone to know how to do and to fly straight-in approaches, because I can guarantee you the first time you do a straight-in approach, it's going to be a lot harder than you think, because your sight picture's off, your energy management, when do you start to pull the power back? Do I do a 3-degree glide slope? When do I start the descent? All that stuff comes into play. So the more you do it, the more efficient you'll be at it. And I think this kind of comes with a bigger trend that I'm seeing in flight schools, is everybody wants to just push through pilots and, come here and in 6 months you'll be, an ATP and you'll be ready to go fly for an airline. So we're going to train you from day one to fly the 172 like you're flying a 737 or an Airbus. And listen, I don't fly the Airbus like I fly my Piper Cub, and I shouldn't fly my Piper Cub or 172 like I fly the Airbus. So, I think the procedures and checklist usage and flows and AQP style training is really beneficial. But I don't think you should be flying a general aviation airplane like you would fly a transport category airplane. And I think that's where some people, I don't want to say get confused, but they're, no, it's not safe, do a pattern. Or, I've seen people fly these B-52 patterns because they think they're an airliner, and they'll be 5 miles out, full flaps, 60% throttle because they think that's what airliners do. It's not a turbine aircraft. It doesn't weigh 180,000 pounds. You're not flying a 3-degree glide slope. So don't fly your airplane like you would fly an airline. Fly an airliner like you would fly an airliner once you go through the airline training and you get typed in that specific airplane. Same thing goes for people that never land with a tailwind. Well, you shouldn't land outside of the airplane's limitations. If there's a 10-knot limitation for landing with a tailwind, if there's 11-knot tailwind, I'm not saying you should land with a tailwind. But if there's a little bit of a tailwind and the pattern's empty and no one is landing the opposite way, you should land with a tailwind to see what it's like, and you can see how much longer your ground roll is and how you're going to have to increase your rate of descent on a 3-degree glide slope, just to kind of see how it is. Because if you're flying the same way all the time and you're always landing with a headwind, or you never land with a crosswind, there'll come a time when you least expect it, because TAFs are not, they're not always 100% accurate, where the weather's going to change, or maybe the runway the airport has a one-way in, one-way out approach. and you're going to land with a tailwind, or you might take off with a tailwind. So, run the numbers in the book, make sure you can do it, and then go out there and practice it. And if you're not confident, or you're a little apprehensive, which is a good thing, right? You should have a healthy amount of respect for flying. Go out with an instructor and say, hey, I want to do some tailwind landings, or some no flap landings, or some straight in landings. You really gotta make yourself uncomfortable to become a better pilot, and I don't see that often. I've done some BFRs recently where, hey, let's do a no flap landing, and it threw everything off because they haven't practiced them or they haven't done them. Or hey, let's do a straight in approach from 3,000 feet, right? And they're just kind of all over the place because it's out of the ordinary. Even myself, it happens to me. I was doing a line check on the Airbus, and I had a good friend of mine who was an FO who kind of saved my butt. But we were going to Cleveland, and they cleared us for the approach at like 30,000 feet or something, which is really, really odd, right? But it was late at night, and the approach controller was working all those sectors, or whatever it was. But usually, you get vectored around up until the point where you're 180 knots on downwind to base, and approach is going to tell you when to, slow down, to descend, when to intercept a localizer, all that stuff. And then the one time they don't, which is this time because it's out of the ordinary, cleared me for the approach 30 miles out, up in the mid-30s, and I was kind of all over the place, right? It's a really simple thing to do, but I just hadn't done it, so it kind of threw me off. So I think that's why it's really important to go out and do things safely with an instructor, maybe at a quiet airport, such as a straight-in approach, a no-flap landing, slips. That was another one. There was a flight school, I think it was out in California. It was Gold something. Gold Standard, Gold Coast Aviation, that was, hey, you should never do slips. They're dangerous. It means you're unstable. And that's an awful, awful piece of advice. What happens if your flaps don't work and you have a certain amount of runway and you have an obstacle? Flaps are the only way, or doing a slip is the only way you're going to get down. Or if you're high and fast in an emergency descent because you lost your engine and you have one field in front of you and you need to get down, what are you going to do? You have to slip the airplane, right? Now, if you're constantly slipping because you're always high and unstable, that's a different story. But you should know how to slip the airplane. And slips are not dangerous. And really, I do slips all the time, mostly because they're fun and I have no flaps. So again, just kind of something I'm seeing in the training, general aviation training. And like I said, it's good to train in a way that prepares you for the airlines, like standardization, checklist usage, all that stuff. But flying a 172 like you would fly an Airbus is just not really beneficial, I think, for the beginning student. Again, there's a million different ways to do things in aviation, and I'm certainly not the expert in everything, but I've been flying for a little bit and I've seen a little bit, so this is just my opinion. And again, with the BFRs that I've done, I've noticed when everything is going as planned, everything's great, everything's fine, but you throw a little bit wrench in the plans, and like tighten up the base or do a straight-in approach or no flap landing or landing with a little bit of a tailwind, and everything just kind of falls apart. So I kind of wanted to just make that point for the people out there that are preparing for BFR or for new students that are out there. Don't be afraid to fly the airplane a little bit out of your comfort zone in a safe manner so you can become a better pilot. Because if you're only flying with no wind and you're only flying a complete pattern, it may bite you, right? And I myself did that too. When I first got my Cub, if there was any amount of wind at all, I would never go out. And then I said, you know what? I'm never going to get better if I don't go out and fly when there's wind. So I slowly went up when there was, the windsock would move a little bit, and then I'd go out. And then the wind got a little stronger, and every couple months I'd increase my limit to the point where now I'm pretty confident and pretty proficient in going out with pretty windy and gusty conditions. And not that I go out and seek that, but if you're flying your airplane and let's say something happens where you're a little more delayed and the weather changes, you can do it, and you can do it safely, and you're proficient. So again, just wanted to put that out there and make a point that don't be afraid to do things that some people may perceive as dangerous, right? I'm not saying violate any FARs or bust any limitations that your aircraft manufacturer has, but go out, fly the airplane, maybe find your limits, maybe find the airplane's limits, right, with an instructor. The point is, if you want to become a better pilot, a more proficient pilot, kind of push the envelope just a little bit with an instructor. So that's it. That's all I got. And of course, any feedback is welcome. Thanks.